What if the stories we call fairy tales are really stories about time, loss, and waiting for life to begin? Well, welcome to the Coachman, and today's wonderful story. It has a different name, but you're going to recognize it as something else. And the story for today is actually called the Briar Rose, and it's by the Brothers Grimm. And if you've been listening to this channel, you'll know that the Brothers Grimm is one of, it's a classic. These guys are incredible, but they're also very one of my favorites on the channel as well. But like I said, this story, you'll recognize it after a little bit, but I'm not gonna say too much more. So with that being said, let's get into the story and enjoy. A long time ago, there was a king and queen who said every day, if only we had a child. But they never had one. Then, one day, when the queen was bathing, a frog crawled out of the water onto the bank and said to her, your wish will come true. Before the year is out, you will have a daughter. What the frog said came true. The queen had a baby girl who was so beautiful that the king could hardly contain his joy. Trust me, he could contain his joy, and he also contained it with like a guillotine and a couple of guards. Oh, and also for you fathers out there, y'all know what I'm talking about. He ordered a grand feast and invited all his relatives, friends, and acquaintances. He also invited the wise women of the kingdom, so they would look kindly on the child. There were 13 wise women in all, but the king had only 12 golden plates for them to eat from, so one had to be left out. I'm going to keep it all the way a buck. There's a lot that I've learned, and if I learned one thing, if you have 13 women and you tell one of them, yo, you can't come, that one's going to be pissed. No joke. That one is going to be like, wait, why me? Doesn't matter. Any one of the 13, they're going to ask, yo, why me? And it's not going to be yeah. I feel bad for the king, but I mean, he is a king. The feast was magnificent, and when it came to an end, the wise women stepped forward to give the baby their magical gifts. One gave her goodness, another beauty, a third wealth, and so on, until the child had been given everything in the world that anyone could wish for. When 11 of them had given their blessings, the 13th suddenly burst in. She was furious, go figure, about not being invited. And without greeting anyone or even glancing around, she cried out in a loud voice, when the king's daughter is 15 years old, she will prick her finger on a spindle and fall down dead. And without another word, she turned and swept out of the room. I'm not going to lie, mate. Do you see, think about that. This woman wished death upon a kid because she wasn't invited to a fucking dinner. Yeah. And all the ladies out there who are listening, you know. And fellas, if you don't know, you'll find out one day. Not to say it's all, and not to say it's every, but I'm just saying. I've seen it. Everyone was horrified. But the 12th wise woman, whose gift had not yet been given, stepped forward. She could not undo the terrible curse, but she could soften it. It will not be death, she said. Instead, the princess will fall into a deep sleep that will last 100 years. The king, desperate to protect his dear child, ordered that every spindle in the entire kingdom be burned. Meanwhile, the gifts of the wise women all came true. The girl grew up to be so beautiful, kind, good-natured, and wise that everyone who met her couldn't help but love her. On the very day she turned 15, the king and queen happened to be away, and the young princess was left alone in the palace. When the cat's away, the mice will play. Call parlay. It's like, no, I'm just kidding. That was my house. That's what I be doing. I'm talking about it's time to get down. You know what I mean? Shindigs galore, yeah. And it's a castle, brother. Yeah, I mean, that's like you could have a party in one room and nobody would hear you on the other side. Yo, it would be all out. You know what I'm saying? Debauchery. She wandered from room to room, exploring wherever she pleased. See what I mean? Until at last she came to an old tower. Dangerous. Especially if the door's locked. Never do that. A kid and a door locked. Telling you, cat thief. She climbed the narrow, winding staircase and reached a small door. A rusty key sat in the lock. When she turned it, the door sprang open. And there, in the tiny room, sat an old woman with a spindle, busily spinning flax. "Good day," she said, "Princess. What are you doing?" "I'm spinning," said the old woman, nodding her head. "What's that thing that bobs around so cheerfully?" asked the girl. She reached out and took the spindle, wanting to try spinning herself. But the moment she touched it, the curse came true. She pricked her finger. The instant she felt the prick, she fell onto the bed that stood nearby and sank into a deep sleep. And this sleep spread all over the entire palace. The king and queen, who had just come home and stepped into the great hall, fell asleep where they stood, and the whole court fell asleep with them. The horses in the stable fell asleep, and so did the dogs in the yard, the pigeons on the roof, and the flies on the wall. Think about that. They just said the flies on the wall fell asleep, brother. I'm talking about, that's some powerful juju right there. Talking about like straight voodoo, yeah? That Caribbean, you know what I mean, judge and all that stuff. I mean, straw dolls and all that. It's wicked, brother. I'm telling you. You don't play with that juju. That's how you get fucked up. It's not right, but well, gotta watch it. Even the fire flickering on the hearth went still and slept. Okay, this is a whole different level. Come on, we're talking about fire. How does fire go to sleep? And yet it just smoke, you know what I mean? The roast stopped sizzling. The cook, who was just about to grab the kitchen boy by the hair for making a mistake, let go and fell asleep. The wind died down, and not a single leaf stirred on the trees outside the castle. Called night night. All around the castle, a hedge of thorns began to grow. Every year it grew higher, until at last it covered the castle completely. You couldn't even see the flag on the roof. But the story of the beautiful, sleeping princess called Briar Rose spread across the land, and from time to time a prince would come and try to push through the thorny hedge to reach the castle. But none of them could. The thorns clung together like clasped hands, and the young men got caught in them and couldn't break free. They died there, one after another. I'm going to keep it all the way a buck. I get it. You know what I mean? You're trying to go for a princess. But here, look, the minute I see a dead body, like sitting in a thorn of roses, like the first guy, I get it. You know what I mean? You don't know. The second, third, all right, come on now. You're seeing dead bodies. It's like, brother, turn back. But that's the thing. They said one after the other. So that means there's more. There's like handfuls. The fourth on, it's like See, you need to learn to leave. You got to learn when to leave well enough alone. Period. That's it. Sorry. I love love too, but I ain't going that far for some woman I've never seen who's stuck behind something that I have no idea what it is. Sorry, it's time to go home. I guess I'm going to be a lonely prince. Not worth it. But for that guy that, for the one who gets through, hey, you persevered, my mans. Some things are worth it. Some things aren't. Price is always what somebody's willing to pay for it. After many, many, many years, another prince came to the country. He met an old man who told him about the hedge of thorns and the castle behind it, where a wonderfully beautiful princess named Briar Rose had been sleeping for 100 years, along with the king and the queen and the entire court. The old man's grandfather had told him that many princes had tried to get through the thorns, but all had been trapped and died. The young prince said, "Well, I'm not afraid. I'm going to find the beautiful Briar Rose." The old man tried to talk him out of it, but the prince wouldn't listen. See? When you're that, when you're a young Thundercat, we all know which head he's thinking with. And it's good, man. That's gravy. You don't know? Ignorance is bliss. Shit. Go ahead. Enjoy the bliss, bruv. Now, as it happened, the 100 years has come to an end, and the day had arrived for Briar Rose to wake up. When the prince approached the thorn hedge, he found it covered in large, beautiful flowers. They were parted on their own to let him through without a scratch, then closed up again behind him like a wall. In the courtyard, he saw the horses and spotted hounds lying asleep. On the roof, the pigeons sat with their heads tucked under their wings. Inside the house, the flies were still on the wall. The cook in the kitchen still had his hand raised, and the maid sat frozen beside the chicken she had been about to pluck. He went on through the great hall, where the entire court lay asleeping, and up by the throne lay the king and queen. He went further still, and everything was so silent he could hear its own breathing. At last he came to the tower and opened the door of the little room where Briar Rose was sleeping. There she lay, so beautiful that he couldn't look away. "I know that look, my brother. I understand it. You see a fine little yum, and you just can't do nothing. You're hooked. You're hooked." He bent down and kissed her. The moment his lips touched hers, Briar Rose opened her eyes, woke up, and smiled at him. Lucky man right there, boy. Lucky man. They went downstairs together, and the king woke up, and the queen, and the whole court, and everyone looked at each other in amazement. The horses in the courtyard stood up and shook themselves. The hounds jumped up and wagged their tails. The pigeons on the roof pulled their heads out from under their wings, looked around, and flew off into the countryside. The flies on the wall began to crawl again. The fire in the kitchen blazed up and cooked the meat. The roast began to sizzle once more. The cook boxed the kitchen boy's ears so hard that he yelped. Telling you, if you've never boxed somebody's ears, it is unbelievable, especially when you hear that crack. It's special. The only thing better than boxing somebody's ears, is when you catch them right up under, like where the back of their head, where it comes up at your neck and starts going back out. When you smack somebody there with like all four fingers, there's no better feeling. So I'm sure that cook, I'm sure after 100 years, boy, he was happy to hear that one right there. And the maid finished plucking the chicken. And then the prince and Briar Rose were married with great celebration, and they lived happily for the rest of their lives. So if you couldn't catch on, didn't really get it, that story is obviously Sleeping Beauty. But I mean, honestly, like, I like this story. The way it was and kind of how they not drew it out, but the way like the way it was drawn up. Um, Definitely worth a read. And to be honest, there really isn't. The only thing, you know what? I'll say this: the only thing that I can say that I would say is, how do you want to say it? I think it. I would say the only thing that you can look at this is that timing is everything. You know what I mean? Like, I think, because if you look at it, all them other dudes, yeah, like, they had no idea it was 100 years. But it just so happened the one guy who was like, all them dudes were like, yeah, I got this. You know what I mean? All that machismo shit. But who got it? Who ended up getting through, like, the hurdles and the barriers or whatever? This dude. The one guy, like, on 100 years, notice how everything spread out for him. He got the, like, survey. He got through because timing. Sometimes, like, and I wouldn't say timing is everything. I would say timing is beautiful, because it doesn't always happen, but when it does and it just clicks, it's awesome. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I think that it just is what it is, and timing is timing, and sometimes people have it, sometimes you don't. Can't really do much about it. But hopefully you enjoyed this story. Hopefully you enjoyed, like, my commentary is normal. But for the next story, we're going to be answering this wonderful question of, what if grief begins the first moment we realize people we love cannot stay forever? So think about that one, because it brings up a very interesting topic that I think when I give my take on it, you'll be like, that's different. But hopefully you enjoyed the story. Come on back and enjoy more. But until then, take care.